It's crazy to acknowledge this, but Dub Nation, you know this to be true. Has your happiness day to day as an adult ever been more attached to someone that you don't actually know? When Steph Curry goes down, like your entire fandom flashes before your eyes, especially when he goes down like that in so much pain. And I had some people message me like, "Oh, he doesn't. It was a foul. Yeah, he got fouled, and they didn't give him the call. What else is new?" And I think that there are various reasons. Well, there are two big reasons why. You say, "Well, why doesn't Steph Curry get the respect with the whistle?" One, let's be honest. It's a personality thing. He doesn't berate the referees. The refs aren't worried about him blowing up and making a scene. So, like, there's that element of it, right? And then the other part is it's his basketball integrity. When you look at the foul merchants around the league, we're witnessing it firsthand now with Jimmy, right? A lot of the time when they get into a shot, they're thinking foul first. They're not really worried about the shot at all. They really are just worried about the foul. Steph is always trying to make the shot or make the play, and then trying to get the contact, and the foul comes second, like 99% of the time. But that's neither here nor there. It's really about the chef's health. And y'all hear that? Bob and Brad has hooked me up again. This time, it's the Easy Back Massager. It's got heat as well. Now, a lot of guys, I think, are this way. I carry pretty much all my tension in my upper back, in my traps. I'm a big back, as my kids say, but in a good way. But yeah, this massager is lit. It's uh, you already know the brand Bob and Brad, and you're gonna get a quality product. And look, a lot of things these days, everything wants to be wireless, right? Here, let me pull it out here. I'm getting a little carried away. Everything wants to be wireless these days. You see the heat going. Um, but something like this, you don't want to be wireless. You're going to forget to charge it. The battery's going to go bad. And the power that this thing has, you need a wire. And then not just a wire, a 6-foot wire, so that you can remain dynamic in how you use this massager. And so I use, again, the tension in my traps. I get tilted at the computer every day. The heat not only loosens me up, but then just how strong the massage is and how high quality it is. They continue to hook me up. And so I'm going to hook y'all up with this easy massager from Bob and Brad. Click the link in the description and get 10% off right now. Understand what I'm saying when I say this. I'm not blaming Steph whatsoever. I just feel like people get so sensitive when it comes to the chef. Again, when he's hurt, but there was a play in the game in that third quarter where he came up with a loose ball and he pushed it coast to coast. And you could tell he just didn't have a plan for what he was going to do. And he ended up just like kind of dribbling into the baseline. And I think he turned it over. And I was like, dang, he's still kind of mentally fatigued. He's still kind of mentally, he's not really sharp. And that's the danger in that. The injuries, listen, it was going to be a hard fall either way. But when you watch it, he never braces himself for the impact. And it's just a split second too. But when your mind is sharper, you can protect yourself a little better in those bang bang situations. And so he comes down on the tailbone, and what are they labeling it? A pelvic contusion, no structural damage, not flying to Atlanta today with the team. And look, we all know the back is super dynamic and different for everybody. He had already had something going on with his back. Maybe this will knock that right. Maybe that'll straighten that out for him. The back is such a gray area. There's so much involved in the back injuries and the vertebrae and all that. I don't have to explain that. But to be honest with you, if this is just like a week, 10 days, because they said that was the most encouraging thing. You know what allowed me to sleep last night was when Steve Kerr said he wanted to go back in the game. I was like, because in my mind, I'm like, yo, season. Right? Right? Most of us were like, oh, there's the season. Right? There it goes. But the fact that they said he was trying to go back in bodes well. But again, the back, you just don't know how it's going to respond. But let's say it's a week to 10 days. I think it could end up working out for the Warriors because, again, to me, what I was seeing was still Steph fatigued, not all there mentally and engaged. And so, if he can have another week or so to charge that battery for the playoff run, it could end up being a good thing. But then the question is, can the boys hold the fort down while he rests on a 2-week road trip? The other thing that I wanted to bring up about like Steph's fatigue right at this point in the season, they're all physically fatigued and drained for different things. But Steph, what I imagine that last East Coast road trip, the Garden, Brooklyn, they were in Charlotte, back home in Charlotte, all those stops. Imagine the extra uh, just juice that Steph he doesn't have to, but he always does give to these road fans in these road crowds and all the fans waiting outside of the arenas, the pregame warm up, the postgame stuff. You got to imagine that saps a lot of energy out of Steph just emotionally on top of performing and carrying the team. And so that's where I think where I would hypothesize why he may be so emotionally and drained right now and kind of like mentally not there. And so, fingers crossed with that, right? I mean, that's just every time it happens. It doesn't happen that often, but when he goes down like that, man. And so you see Chase Center's in shock, Draymond, the whole team. It's written all over their face because just like us, they know what that could represent for everything they're fighting for right now. And Quentin Post pumps up the crowd, right? And he is the one that becomes the emotional leader in that moment. He's going to play 10 plus years in this league. Like there's no doubt about it. And for all the things that Dunleavy has done, he might be the biggest move that he's made thus far. But that brings me to Jimmy Butler. On a night where, listen, you got big Scotty Barnes on you, one of the better young, big wing, versatile defenders in the league. You've got a true 7-footer in Jakob Poeltl waiting for you at the rim. Oh yeah, and they're not going to give you any of your typical whistles. And so he's 1 of 10 in that fourth quarter, but winners win, right? The cliche, you hear Draymond say it all the time. Well, I don't know how it is, but I know we winners, right? And that's what you saw down the stretch. He found a way to make it happen. The defensive play, the timing of that block, and this is where it can't be measured because I'm guilty of this too. Like the Wiggins thing, I didn't know how this was going to work, but you say, oh, point of attack defense and stats and all these things. How many guys on that rotation to make that block take a step over one beat early and now it wasn't quickly, it was Shed, right? Shed dumps that to Poeltl for the dunk. There's all this nuance and timing and understanding to Jimmy's game that makes him so much greater, I guess, than the stats and the actual maybe skill set of how it looks. But I think that the most encouraging thing about, the Jimmy triple-double, Draymond hitting all those threes, which we know how important that's going to be, the youngsters all chipped in their own way, and that's what they're going to need while Steph charges this battery. I talked about Quentin. 6 of them things. He just keeps letting them off. And it's just a huge pickup. And you heard Kerr say that he's so big because that's how teams will defend us in the playoffs. Memphis does it that way, that top locking sellout defense. The cost of that, or not the cost, but part of what goes along with that is basically your big has to sag off and protect the rim because you're inviting all these backdoor cuts, right? And so with Quentin Post out there, that big can't do that. Now he's in a real predicament because QP's letting him go, and it's pick your poison, where in the past at times it's shut us down, it's locked us down. And so that's huge, right? Santa Clara pods. That's what Santa Clara pods looks like. And it was interesting what he said. Was it post-game or halftime? I can't remember. In his interview, they asked him, like, dude, how are you? You've come back from injury, and it seems like you're even better. And his response was, I got some rest. And that stuck out to me. And when you think about Pods, his motor and his physicality and how he plays every minute on the floor, I think you have to take that in mind. You have to keep that in mind, big picture with him. Meaning, like, at least at this stage in his career where he's a youngster and he's thrown it all on the line, probably got to keep him under 30 minutes. Just big picture, because he will wear down because of his playing style. But again, you're seeing him pick the windows on the screens, whether it's a switch or just a show, and find that. And then another huge thing for him, I think, is that float game. And again, you go back to the Santa Clara tape, he would feast on floaters. And then, his rookie year and he that running hook and stuff like that. I think that there was an adjustment, not just with the size and athleticism of the rim contesters, but as a pace. Because there's so many bigger athletes on the floor and in the paint, you speed up, right? And so the floating, and we'll talk about that with Kuminga here in a second, but floaters and those runners, the pace is very important. You can have the touch, but if you don't shoot it at the right pace, it's very hard to control. And I think Pods is finding that pace and that comfortability in that in-between float game to go on top of it with threes. It's all clicking for him. That brings me to Kuminga. And what did he have? He had double-digit points. I think he had some moments like, listen, I understand he's not going to be Magic Johnson with his feel and his flow of the game, but there still is a place for an ISO scorer to get tough baskets, especially in the playoffs. And you saw a couple instances of that last night. Now, as he finds his footing and refines his rhythm, I talked about playing off 1 foot, playing off 2 feet. The shot that he really needs to do away with, in my eyes right now, is that runner. And, the issue for him is he may have the touch for it, but he has too much burst for it. When Kuminga gets downhill, it's with such velocity and speed for him to square up and get that floater. It's far more difficult. You look at SGA, super good at it. KD, super good at it. Well, when they come downhill and turn the corner, they're going at like half the speed Kuminga is. That's why it's a much more efficient shot for them rather than Kuminga. And the other thing that I'm looking for him to bring back, something that he was doing so well before the injury, is he would turn the corner to the free throw line to the nail, and then he would pause. He would hit you with this hesitation pause, and he could either leave and burst out of it, or he might rock into a little mid-ranger. And that slows down the pace and lets him view the floor, give him a better picture of what the defense is doing. When he turns the quarter at 100 miles per hour, it's so fast, it's so bursty. He really has only one option. It's so quick. He doesn't have time to make decisions. And that little hezzy hang dribble pound at the nail would let him survey the floor and he still keep his legs loaded to explode to the rim or go to plan B or C. And once he gets a little more patient offensively and brings that back, I think he'll look a lot better headed downhill in those scenarios. But they get it done, man. It would have just added such insult to injury if they would have blown that down the stretch there. In Toronto, I said it in today's breakdown, like March Madness isn't just for college basketball. Traditionally in the NBA, this is the time of the year, it's upset city. You're playing these teams who have gone young. They've got guys on 10-day contracts, two-way players who are fighting to stay in the league or put food on the table. And sometimes it's hard to match how hard they're playing. They're not playing like the $50 million player that's going to take plays off. And then you look at this Toronto team with all these big physical athletes. They're going to foul the shit out of you, right? They're super physical. And it was a recipe for a tough game. And if you want to talk like why, as the threes were raining and you look at the score and you're like, dude, why are they right with us? Well, we missed GP2 in that one as a point of attack defender because Quickly and Shed, ultra quick guards, were just turning the corner on us too easily, and Quickly, he puts as much pressure on you turning the corner off a screen as anybody in the league. You talk about burst and stuff like that. And so I thought that was kind of the root of the defense, not holding up like you should, not as much good communication. And then their others were making shots, but a win's a win. And it goes to the point of this road trip where I think like all the teams are under 500 on this trip. That doesn't mean anything this time of the year because everyone's playing for different reasons. And these teams tend to have guys out there that may be playing for more individually than the guys on your team. And so, yeah, hopefully, again, fingers crossed with Steph in this injury. I'm sure it's just going to be day to day, and we're not going to know until it's better. He's not going to know. But this Miami game is going to be tough. Atlanta, Trae Young, the Hawks, they have enough talent to beat you. There's no doubt about that. Hopefully the young fellas don't go out in Atlanta. I don't imagine they do with the schedule. But that Miami game is going to be super tough. I'm calling for that one to be. I'll be really surprised if we get that Miami game because obviously the Jimmy thing, and then what if they lost like 9 in a row? I think we're gonna see Miami play that game like it's game 7 of the NBA finals. And so that will be interesting to see if they can overcome that. But yeah, one day at a time with the injury, and while he's resting, as the young fellas continue to contribute, we got to stay out of that play-in. I think that's it goes without saying, but especially for our core guys being older, that week off before the actual playoffs is everything. Y'all enjoy the weekend. Hit that like, share, and subscribe. I'm out, y'all.